beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois. And as you know, I was off this last week in the act of moving to a new location. I'm currently staying with my nephew Jason and his family, who have been very kind to allow that. And I'm getting used to a new filming location. And as you can see, I'm experimenting with backgrounds at this time. And I'm also having some interesting experiences with lighting. This morning, I was filming using Zoom and had one distinct lighting effect. And today, using Restream, I'm having a very different one. This lighting looks very good to me. The other one, I mean, it looked fine, but it was definitely much warmer than I was expecting. So that's going to be an interesting thing to get used to. I'm going to have to see what I can do with lighting in the location, particularly for filming at night. But that's always part of filming. So welcome to Midday with Reverend Don. If you are familiar with Midday with Reverend Don, you will know that you can type your comments or questions into whatever platform you may be watching the program on, and we can communicate directly. And today, I titled the program Which College? And we're going to be talking a bit about that. But in general, I want to talk about some of the things that I'm working on at this time, one of which is Which College? And the first one I want to comment upon, um, well, I did my seance this weekend. That went very nicely. Um, it's been a little while since I had done a seance, and it was very nice to do that. I'm currently working on the Corellian Book of the Dead. I expect to have the copies ordered by the middle of the week so that they will be in people's hands hopefully by November 11th, give or take a day. And hello to Renee in the chat room and hello to Lynn in the chat room. It's good to see you both. Um, the book is basically ready to go, and it's been quite an experience writing. Um, Writing it when I've really written it rather quickly for what I normally write. And I'm looking at continuing to do that. I'm looking at producing a number of um, smaller books than what I commonly write, dealing with more specific subjects. Because if you've read my books, you'll know they usually um, are course material dealing with large numbers of different subjects brought together um, for the purpose of the course, whereas this book is a single subject explored in greater depth. And I'm looking at doing a number of those. The Book of the Dead is the first. The Book of the Dead deals with everything from the nature of the soul and reincarnation to probable lives and parallel incarnations, to the relationship between ancestral spirits and reincarnation, um, to how to do a funeral, um, traditional rites around mourning, the concept of conscious incarnation, and many other things dealing with um, issues around death. And I think that people will find it a very interesting and helpful book. On my Patreon, I'm um, looking at reforming some aspects of my Patreon. I've not done well with the monthly newsletter, so I think um, that probably is not going to remain. But I'm looking instead at reading a number of materials. We're discussing currently on the Patreon what people would like to hear me read. And currently, spooky stories for the season and Edgar Allan Poe in particular have been brought up. Hello to Mary in the chat room. Good to see you, Mary. And I suspect the very first offering will be Edgar Allan Poe. Um, and we'll see what all happens with that. It's also been suggested I might read my own novel, which I suspect we will do. But unlike the works of Poe, it will take a lot longer to go through because it's a much longer piece of literature. Hello to Temple of the Starry Sky, and So we're going to be looking at doing some of that. I figure that around winter solstice, I will probably do Dickens' Christmas Carol, and we'll have a variety of audio presentations coming on the Patreon here soon. I'm also looking at the possibility of Reverend Don's photo of the day, which has been suggested. So if you have any suggestions for what you might like to see on the Patreon, let me know. I'm looking to make it um, really what people would like it to be. And hello to Mary Hawk in the chat room. Hello to Magical Mermaid. Um, and Magical Mermaid says, "Do you have a tarot book?" And yes, I do. Um, Arguably, we have several of them. Hello to Diane in the chat room. We have the Tarot of Hecate book, and we also have the various Infinite Tarot expansion books that go with it. So those are available. If you're interested in that, I believe we have them at CorellianPublishing.com, and they can certainly be ordered. Now, I will say the Tarot of Hecate book on tarot is on that particular deck, not on tarot in general. But the second degree book deals with tarot in general in the first chapter. So I have those sources. I also have the video class Tarot 101, which you can find on Magic TV, or you could take at Witch School as a class. And also, I've done various classes on tarot at Witch School. And hello to Diane in the chat room. Um, so I've done a number of different pieces on tarot. I've also, as you know, done a number of different tarot decks. And we're looking at doing some more of those. Now, going back to Witch College is a new project, and I have made a 5-year commitment to Witch College to act as a teacher there, particularly in the course of the psychic arts. And as you may know, I've already been doing Psychic 101 for several weeks now, and it's going to be a full um, it's part of a full 5-year course on psychic skills. This will also become a book series as well. And, you know, much of my life, well, all of my life as an adult, um, has been spent in the spiritual segment of life. I have been a priest my entire adult life, and I've also been a professional psychic most of my adult life. And this particular series will focus on the psychic part of my life, the things that I've learned there. And I have to say that I've had a very encyclopedic career as a psychic, which will come in handy. Um, I have read many, many different ways, and if I haven't done it myself, I've known others who do. And I was very fortunate that very early on, and I don't think it's an especially uncommon thing, but I met a number of psychics and became friends with them who read virtually everything that they could get their hands on, with the result that I got a very broad education in these matters. And of course, I've also continued to educate myself. Temple of the Starry Sky says, "What's the difference between which college and which school, and will you be involved in both?" Which school is the seminary of the Corellian tradition. It has all kinds of wonderful classes, and it is its own project run by the Corellian Church. And I have been highly involved with that for many years. I will continue to be as involved as they would like me to be. Um, as you know, I am currently retired in office in the church. So my skills are still available to them. And we'll see what I do for which school in the future. I'd certainly be very happy to talk to them about new classes, new materials. Which college is a totally separate project, um, and is intended to be a broader project and focus on, in some ways, more the professional aspects of these things, um, such as psychic work. Psychic Academy is part of which college? And the whole idea of Psychic Academy is one, to learn the psychic arts, but also, if you're so inclined, learn how to make a living as a professional psychic, learn what's involved in that. Even if you're not looking at doing it, the things that are involved in it are very important, I think, for anyone who wants to use a lot of those skills. The other things coming at which college will have um, a very practical application, and it will cover as broad a course of materials as possible. So basically, they are two different projects originated by the same people, but aiming in slightly different ways. Um, Arguably in largely different ways. So that is the difference between them, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that in the future as well. Um, with the in the Corellian clergy materials, we talk a great deal about psychic arts and abilities, and we have a very good section on psychic exercises. In the Psychic 101 course at which college, we're approaching also the psychic arts, psychic exercises to develop yourself, but they're not the same. They're viewed from a somewhat different angle, and I think that in the end, every different way that we can approach knowledge is beneficial to us. One of the comments I've seen in various places is I've seen people who, whenever a new project is mentioned, almost regardless of what it is, they'll say, "But someone else is already doing this." And Sir Edward has been making the answer to that comment, is that enough? Um, is it enough to have one school, 10 schools, 100 schools? Um, my, I'm inclined to say it's enough when all students have a place to go. Hello to Tom in the chat room. Good to see you, Tom. Directories. There are numerous directories for the community at present. Would one be enough? Years ago, we did the Roundtable magazine in Chicago. And one of the things we had there was a directory of Chicago stores, temples, and other listings, which were um, very encyclopedic for the Chicago community. But um, it was a single directory available in that time in the 90s, and when we stopped doing the magazine, there was no more directory. Had there been several, then the loss of one would not have disturbed the others. So I think Magical Mermaid in the chat room says the more the merrier, and that tends to be my attitude also. And the more likely to survive. We live in interesting times, and we always do. One of the subjects that will get me going is the history of the metaphysical community, because so many people want to truncate it down into something much smaller and more recent than it really is, because they don't remember what happened. Um, I mean, things like it well, to mention a few important metaphysical movements that you hardly ever hear about today. We have the Druids of Yola Morgannog from the 18th century. We have the Church of Carmel from the 19th century. We have the Church of Aphrodite from the early 20th century, all of which have an influence on our modern um, pagan and metaphysical communities. But most people don't remember they were even there in the first place, let alone have an idea of the influence they left behind. And that is in part because there are not enough places talking about them. And therefore, not that many people know about them unless they happen to have access to often relatively obscure places. I often talk about Lydia Becket, who was very influential in paganism in um, the plains here in Indiana, Illinois, this part of the United States. But try to find her name in more mainstream circles. You're going to be very hard pressed to find her. She's an absolutely historical figure. There's some room to argue about what tag you want to put her under. Um, Her family considered her to be Wiccan, but that word was not actually in use um, as a self descriptor during her lifetime. She was related to my family, and they had a number of adventures together. But, try to find the name Lydia Becket outside of Corellian circles. It's there. You can find it, but it's not easy. Um, and this is why things like multiple directories are good. It's why having multiple schools approaching subjects from multiple points of view is good, because no one is going to cover everything. Hello to Janet in the chat room. Good to see you. Um, how different schools are going to approach different subjects will be entirely dependent on who's involved in them. And, my thought is that they're all good. I was going through during this move, I was going through a number of old boxes. One of the things I found was um, from the days when we were doing the World of Witches Museum. I found the complete course of the School and Church of Wicca, as I recall, the Frost Wicca, which we happen to have a copy of. Um, and this copy is 30 years old. It's definitely a piece of history, and the way that it presents things is not necessarily the way you'd see them presented today, or even how that tradition would present them today. Um, it's one of the reasons I try so hard to hold on to my morgues, because you see things in those morgues that certainly don't go with contemporary fashion, but are an important part of history. And Magical Mermaid says perhaps a museum would be nice. Well, it might be. And we're talking about things like that again. But um, they don't support themselves. It takes a lot of work to do something like that and keep it going. And it seems to me it has to be part of a larger project. But is it a good idea? Absolutely. A virtual museum might also be a good idea. But that takes a lot of hands also. And one of the things I think people don't fully understand, one of the things, is just how many people it takes to make a successful anything. Um, it's very little that a single person can do alone and keep it going. Now, there are a lot of successful projects that one or two people have done alone for a short time, occasionally even for a long time. But ultimately, there need to be more people, more resources to keep any project going. Um, and this is always an important thing. The other thing that is very important to any project, especially something like a school, is technology. And, I'm sitting here talking to you on Restream, and it is so easy to do. But I can remember the first time we ever tried live broadcasting. We were in Salem broadcasting the Witches' Ball. And to do this, we needed a tea tray full of electronic equipment, and we still got very mixed results because this was so much at the inception at that time. The fact that we can do it now so easily and so regularly is amazing. And the reason we can do it, however, is we've stayed on top of it. And so if you're going to be doing any project that relies on communication, particularly something like Witch School or Witch College, you must stay on top of the technology. You have to be able to reach your audience. You have to be able to reach your students. One of the things that's particularly important about the Witch College project is that it's using much newer technology, um, and I think will function much more smoothly as a result. But we have always tried to be on the cutting edge of technology, and when I look at the um, the history of things I've been involved with, the growth of that technology is breathtaking. The things we can do today that we couldn't do then. And I can only imagine what another 10 years, another 15 years will bring. And I have I have an idea of some of the things that which college is going to bring, but that will be another show in terms of technology. But there are some very exciting things being discussed. And I think that we're going to see a great animation of the way in which we present our materials versus how they formerly were. Now, Tom says, my culture has the same problem. In this country, or this country will do whatever it can to keep the Native Americans depressed and forgotten about. We learn any way we can. Yes, absolutely. That is 100% true. Um, and it's vitally important for people from a Native background to preserve traditional teachings any way they can do so. Um, and there will be times when different things that are preserved um, may not be entirely congruent with one another because in actual traditional societies things weren't always, and that's perfectly fine. If it's there, preserve it. I saw a beautiful story just last night on a celebration of traditional mothering techniques and ideas. And it was being celebrated with a dance of women who were wearing cradle boards for the dancing. And it was described as preserving cradle board teachings, I believe. Wonderful thing. Now, Magical Mermaid says, just when you figure it out, the status quo wants to change the technology because it's a source of power. Well, it's a source of power, I will agree, but it also, um, the reason it's a source of power is how much more it allows you to get your message out. Um, for years and years and years, if you wanted to hear anything I had to say, you had to read it. You couldn't hear it. Um, it would only be available in writing, even online. Slowly, we got farther and farther into video, but now video is basically becoming the norm for transmission of knowledge, and that makes some significant changes. And I think they're good changes. 'Cause, one of the things people have told me over the years is that having heard me speak, when they then read my writing, they will hear my voice because it's rather distinctive. And I think that when you know how a person presents themselves and how they speak, for example, it does make some difference to how you receive their information. I was talking in the Psychic 101 class at Psychic Academy within the Witch College system um, about the fact that the works of Jane Roberts and Seth greatly affected Lady Crystal and therefore affected me. And that years after studying this material, we finally saw a video of Jane Roberts working with her spirit guide Seth. And had we seen the video before we studied the material, we probably would never have studied it because she was doing it in this very, I would say, traditional spiritualist manner where she had a heavy accent that she was speaking in that sounded like Bela Lugosi in a bad movie and would totally have put us off. In that case, it was lucky for us we didn't see the video because the material is quite good. But it does speak to how seeing the person can affect your impression of what they're saying. Being able to see me as I speak about a subject, being able to interact with me even more so. Um, Magical Mermaid says, and you will live forever in a digital spiritual consciousness, a form of immortality. I completely agree with that, actually. I've said a number of times that I feel the current things we're doing with the internet are actually to some extent a physicalization of what we have traditionally done with the astral plane. That it's part of our progression from the mental into the astral and making it part of our daily lives. Um, I do think that we are creating spiritual avatars, or on the verge of creating spiritual avatars that are, in fact, a form of immortality. And I was speaking of the Book of the Dead earlier and talking about things like probabilities and parallel incarnations and how souls can split. And Magical Mermaid says, Reverend Don Max Headroom Lewis. Well, yes, I believe that a certain portion of my soul, probably, I don't know how large a portion, will probably continue to express itself um, through that digital avatar. Not through every film made of me, but through what I would specifically describe as that digital avatar. And I don't see that as a bad thing. And if you think about it, if you look at the films of the past, in some cases, they almost seem like visual ghosts of the people who made them. Um, a lot of early photography, or a lot of early videography, if we can put it that way, from the late 19th and early 20th century, lately has been being colorized, giving it a more contemporary feel. But you look at these and you realize not only are the people that you're looking at no longer living in this world, many of them were already deceased before even I was born. And I am hardly young. And you see them there looking completely alive. And in a manner of speaking, some ghosts um, are basically echoes of a person's life. A little bit of their energy is caught there, not necessarily very much, but it echoes their life. And those filmed tidbits of these people's physical existence, I think, do keep um, a certain amount of that existence alive. They say that what is remembered lives. And how do we remember things better than by actually seeing them? So, as we do things like the virtual chancellor, I believe we've talked about the virtual chancellor or the eternal chancellor before. Um, yeah, I do believe that it will be much more than just an electronic phenomenon. It will be a spiritual phenomenon. I believe that we're going to see the spirits of those who are in spirit using these technological forms to express themselves into the physical world more and more. And I think this is one of the things we really want to talk about quite a bit at Witch College as we go forward. Only one of many things, but one of the things we'll probably talk about on this program quite a bit, because I believe that in a manner of speaking, they are as good a way of interacting with the spirits of those who have gone before as anything we've ever had before. Um, Still needs some development. I'm not saying it doesn't. Um, but I think sometimes people look at the kinds of technology we're using and assume that they cannot have a spiritual element because they've simply not experienced that yet. And my attitude is no, I believe we're working on a spiritual as much as an electronic technology. And that is where we're going. And Magical Mermaid says digital time capsules. Yes, digital time capsules, and also a digital channel from the world of spirit into the world of matter. Um, Much more work to do, but that ultimately is what I think we're developing at this time. So, with that, I see we've come to the end of our half hour. I want to thank you for joining me. If you're interested in learning more about Witch College, you can go to witchstarter.com and learn more there, perhaps support the project. Um, we welcome your support. If you would like to support my work, you can do so at revdonlewis.com, my Patreon. And as I say, we're going to be starting the reading of things like Edgar Allan Poe on the Patreon. I think that will be fun. So thank you everyone for being here, and let us close as we always do with our prayer. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we rejoice in your presence in our lives. We pray that we shall go forward together, now and for all time to come, hand in hand, one with one another. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives and knowing you are always with us. Yet from respect, we thank you for being with us now. And may the blessing be upon you now and always. And I thank you for being with me now, and I will see you tomorrow, and may the blessing be upon you now and always.